Senate Veterans, Military, and Homeland Security. Welcome everybody that came to join us today. And also, as starting out, I would just ask Senator Hickman if you will lead us in a word of prayer.
Yes, sir. Let us pray. Lord God, the sunshine feels so good, Lord. We just, it uplifts us, makes us feel good. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for that. Lord, we ask you to be with this committee today, Lord, as we review these bills. Help us to do the right things for the great people of Georgia. In your son's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right. We have two bills to be heard today and have HB 53 and HB 108. Both of these bills are Chairman Bonner's bills from the House and having passed the House. So, Chairman Bonner, I will start with House Bill 53, and I'll just go ahead and turn it over to you.
Great.
And I understand you have a new substitute.
I do, and I'll address that here just one sec. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I appreciate y'all hearing all my bills at once. I think I really do appreciate that. House Bill 53 is a measure that was brought to us by our Department of Veteran Services, and this is a bill that addresses our veterans and expands the eligibility of certain veterans to be buried in our state military cemeteries. There was a piece of federal legislation passed back in 2021 that allowed the states to do this, and it's best described by a scenario. As of today, without this legislation, you could have a Georgian that joins the Georgia National Guard, does their initial enlistment, does everything they're supposed to, activates during a disaster here in the state of Georgia, does state active duty, but they never deploy outside the state. They never become federalized, and they don't retire. They simply just do their initial tour of duty. Unfortunately, that individual, as of today, is not eligible to be buried in one of our state military cemeteries. And so what this bill does is expand the eligibility to include those National Guard and reservists that may not be drawing VA disability benefits and may not have retired, but allows them to be buried in one of our state military cemeteries. If I could, I will speak to the substitute. When we first worked on the bill, the instruction that we gave the Legislative Council was not as clear as it needed to be, and so as we moved it through the House, we failed to identify a portion that was struck in the original language, which impacted the overall eligibility. And so we went ahead and moved it through the House, knowing we could make that correction over here, and as the Senate often does, to help make our House bills better, and this is exactly what you'll do. So we address that one general eligibility item in the substitute. But that's what the bill does, Mr. Chairman. It's pretty straightforward, and we will join a number of other states in this, and I think the overall impact to Georgians is relatively small in terms of number, but I do believe it sends the right message and ensuring that anybody that raises their right hand and makes that pledge and does that oath is eligible for that honor.
Just ask a question real quick. Is this the first time the House has sent a bill over here expecting us to fix it?
Well, I will say it certainly won't be the last time.
Okay. Senator Kirkpatrick.
7.
Number 7.
Thank you, Chairman Bonner. Just a question about where the money goes, if there's a fee.
So there is a fee, and it is a fee that the service member's family will pay. It'll be tied to the VA reimbursement rate. So right now, that's roughly $750 that they would pay to do that.
And does that money go to the VA, or does it go to the Department of Veteran Services or the foundation? Just doesn't say in the bill. So
Yeah, so I'll let Commissioner Ross address that specific, if I could.
Thank you, Senator Kirkpatrick, for that question. It would go to the department, so this would be part of our operational funding that would allow us to then bury that individual, that reservist or that guardsman, and their spouse or dependent child that would also qualify.
thank you.
Next will be Senator Harvard.
I'm looking at line 35. it defines who is eligible. And I was really not aware that the Federal Reserve people, Marines, Army, that they were not eligible unless they deceased on active duty. Is that the line of demarcation? That's I didn't understand that.
Well, they would need, and I'll let Commissioner Ross correct me if I'm wrong, but they would have needed to have retired or to have drawn VA benefits in order to be eligible. And
VA
so-
benefits? Okay, thank
Correct,
you.
yeah, they'd have to have the requisite active duty time or have VA benefits, which would be tied to a service-connected disability while on active duty, or be a retiree, as Chairman Bonner
And what's
stated.
the active duty timeline? Because if what I'm getting at, in the National Guard, do you go to active duty for, what is that, 6 weeks, or then you out and you do the National Guard thing? Is that the way it works?
Yeah.
I don't.
That is how it works, sir, and unfortunately, according to the National Cemetery Administration, so the federal VA, your active duty for training time does not count toward your active duty
Okay.
service for burial in a national cemetery, which is what our law was previously based on, and what Chairman Bonner has been so kindly able to do is to expand that to now include reserve and guardsmen.
Okay, good, Bill. I just
Yeah,
didn't.
to kind of address the question more generally, it's going to have a greater impact on our guardsmen than our reservists because
This just
the-
brings them in.
Right, because the
Right,
reservists,
okay.
there's more likelihood of them being on active duty for the requisite time.
Mm-hmm.
But with our National Guard, they could perform all kinds of in-state duty with never and not be federalized and do their initial enlistment and not have this benefit.
But the way the National Guard, if I may, Mr. Chairman, the way the National Guard operates now, they would easily qualify for that, wouldn't they? Because they are.
Well, again, potentially, based on Georgia's current operational cycle.
That's the word I was looking
it's-
for,
It's
right.
likely, but again, this will catch those individuals that raise their right hand, but just
I follow
didn't
you.
meet these other
follow you.
qualifications.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing this. There's a cemetery in Glenville, Georgia, that I visit probably 3 or 4 times a year. And I really enjoy talking to family members or visitors of those cemeteries. I'm very thankful that y'all are doing this. I'm very thankful for the cemetery. You are in the National Guard,
I'm in the Army Reserves.
Army Reserve, okay. So this is very much a passion for you.
Absolutely, and this is, I mean, again, I think that, we don't do enough for our veterans here in Georgia, and this is, again, it's seemingly a small thing, but I think it's something that it sends a great message and makes every veteran aware of the fact that Georgia respects their service.
And just from a trivia standpoint, I remember this, but I don't remember the specifics. When you go by the tombstone, there's quarters or dimes or pennies on top of the tombstone. What does that mean? Oh, you do know?
Yeah.
Would you mind telling me?
They're remembered.
Yeah, well, if there's, I think if it's a penny, it's somebody that's just visited the grave, and if it's a nickel, it's somebody that has served in the same, I think, branch of service or served in the service with that person, up to a quarter. So, I mean, it's different denominations is what I've heard.
Yeah, and what's so interesting about that, there is a good many of them that have some coins on it, but there's a lot of them that do not. And that's what's so sad about some of this.
Well, it really is amazing when you visit our state military cemeteries and our national cemeteries, when you see, not only flowers and notes, but you'll see medals, you'll
Right.
see all kinds of things that are placed there, and it's absolutely, it's as moving as it can be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, thank you. One thing that, and I'm from Milledgeville, so I'm very familiar, the Wreaths Across America. One of my college classmates, James Walters from here in Gwinnett County, helped start that and get that going here in Georgia. Matter of fact, he was here getting his picture and everything for his service that he has given to the great United States military. Right now, these reservists, did they get a discharge or just get a letter of separation? What do they get to prove?
They get a DD 214.
Okay. Is this going to be retroactive? I know right now, time to time, we'll have families come to us and they'll have us disinter loved ones who are veterans that are buried in other areas to move them to the veterans cemetery. And if you do have it retroactive, then, I mean, it could create quite a bit, because I happen to be, for y'all out there in the audience, I happen to be in the funeral business in Milledgeville. I had the very first burial in the Milledgeville Cemetery, so I'm very familiar with it. They do a fantastic job in this beautiful cemetery. But I'm just worried about, you know, what strain it would put on the cemeteries to have it retroactive, and how far back would it go? I mean, we've disinterred people that's been veterans, been buried 30 years, and moved them to the
So
veterans
it
cemetery.
is retroactive. I think a mitigating factor to that is that this particular benefit, it would be at a cost to that family. So if the benefit included relocation, you know, at no cost to the family, I would think that there may be that possibility. But the fact that it is, you know, it does have a cost associated to it may be that mitigating factor that would not put the strain. And I do know that, I mean, we certainly have a great deal of capacity at both of our cemeteries.
And most oftentimes, if someone's already buried with their family, they're probably going to stay with their family.
Could I
Yes,
follow
sir.
up? Will the VA, who's going to be furnishing the headstones? Right now, that's done through the Army, the Monument Services, through the VA. Are they still going to be furnishing it through these people?
Great question, sir. And so that's mine to answer. So we have to enter into a separate contract with the same vendor because, of course, all of our headstones have to be the same. And so the VA, normally we go through them for our active duty members who are interred in our cemeteries, and it's that same vendor. We've already talked to them. We have the cost, as well as for the niche covers. So same vendor, but a separate contract than the VA's. It's one just with the state.
One thing else, if I could follow up, and being in Milledgeville and aware of those headstones, I know if say the veteran's spouse dies and is buried first, they're buried and they're stacked graves. The marker is ordered with her name on it, and it is installed. It may be a few years before the veteran passes away. They don't go back and re-engrave on there. They order a brand new headstone, and that one's put in the grave on top of her casket, and then a new headstone is ordered with both their names, and it just seems to be waste. And I was hoping that we can work on some way to alleviate that. Because there are people that do go to cemeteries and do engraving. And I knew of one guy from Elberton that did that, but the bureaucracy was so, and that it wasn't beneficial for him to continue doing it. So I'm just bringing that up, hopefully that we could find a solution to that also.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Williams, for that. And if you don't mind, Chairman Bonner, I will take that one as well. That is the requirement of the National Cemetery Administration.
Oh,
So
really?
the federal requirements, yes, sir. And so we have to follow their rules. We are inspected by the VA every year. Milledgeville just underwent their inspection, and Senator Hickman, I don't want to spoil the news, but it looks like Glenville is going to get an award for their cemetery. They did
Wow.
an outstanding job at their last inspection. Milledgeville, we're still waiting to hear about theirs. But yes, that is the
Okay.
NCA's
I
requirement.
was not aware of that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, we have one person signed up, and of course, that was Patricia Ross to speak for this bill, so I don't see.
Just one more, if thing for me, Mr. Chairman. That's about the 1990 designation. Can you, once again, I didn't quite get the explanation why it's retro to 1990 for veterans who are deceased. I don't get that.
Yes, sir, we made it retroactive. We tried to basically marry the language to other states that had already enacted this, and I do know of some folks that have not necessarily been interred, but have been cremated, and now want to be buried with their spouse who has died much later. So that's why, is to be able to allow the veteran and their spouse to be buried, even if the spouse or the veteran outlives the other.
Thank you. And also, I did see Ramona Roper signed up.
So sorry. Hello.
Just state your name and where you're from.
I am Ramona Roper. I reside in Athens, Georgia.
All right. You're speaking in favor of this?
Yes. I am the training director for the Georgia Department of Veterans Service, so I work directly with Commissioner Ross. And one of the things that I do is I and my team, we train service officers for the state. And we are constantly, and I'd go to the different offices throughout the state to also train. We're inundated with reservists and National Guardsmen that come into the offices, and they're seeking benefits, and burial is one of the ones that they're looking at. And one of the things is, unfortunately, we have to tell them that the way that the law is as of right now, that they don't fit the eligibility criteria in order to go into either the national or the state veteran cemeteries. And that's very disheartening to have to tell a family member that they're a veteran of the Guard or Reserves that served honorably can't go and have those honors bestowed upon them. So I am in favor of this bill. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we've had public testimony, and it's, I have a motion to pass.
Second.
53. I'll substitute.
All right, and I have second from Senator Kay Kirkpatrick. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. And it passes unanimously.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And you don't have to go nowhere, because who's carrying that bill?
I'll talk to you about
Okay.
it if I could.
All right, and the next bill we have is House Bill 108, and Senator Bonner, that's also your bill, so go ahead and present your bill. Oh, Senator Bonner. Yeah, I did, didn't I? Chairman Bonner, I guess I should say. Go ahead and present House HB 108.
Well, great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. And so we're going to be discussing the SAVE Act. I know that this is a piece of legislation that this committee has already looked at and considered. If I could, I just want to give you kind of my take on this topic. And as y'all know, during the off season, we had a series of hearings throughout the state to discuss this issue of veterans benefits and how Georgia veterans are obtaining their benefits. We had a hearing here in Atlanta, one down in Warner Robins, and the one out in Augusta. And many of you were gracious enough to come to those, and we had lots of testimony, lots of folks that came out to provide input. The one organization that we did not receive any input from was probably in my mind, the one that had the most information, and that was the Veterans Administration. We invited representatives from that organization to every hearing, and they chose not to show up to any of the 3 hearings that we had. And so, as you can imagine, we were certainly disappointed. For me, that kind of highlighted the state of affairs in the Veterans Administration. And, you know, we certainly have some high hopes for one of our former colleagues who's now the Secretary of the Veterans Administration, and I have every confidence that he will make some significant progress. But the fact of the matter is that we as a state cannot directly impact the Veterans Administration, right? So what can we do? Well, fortunately, there are some things we can do here in Georgia. And one of those is to create a environment and a framework that will allow our veterans to exercise their free market option to get these benefits, and then it would put a regulatory construct in place that would protect them. Because let's, look at the state of affairs that we're in today. And this bill addresses claims consultants. And right now, in the state of Georgia, those companies can operate. They can approach a veteran, they can advertise how they choose, they can put out there that we can guarantee your benefits. They can say, Mr. Williams, we know you're a veteran, we'd like to help you get your benefits. All we need is a small check for $5,000 up front to cover our costs, cover our expenses, and we will guarantee you that we will get you your benefits. That's what exists today. So today, there is no protection for our veterans getting approached by these companies. Now, there's plenty of companies that are doing the right thing. There's plenty of companies that are not doing the right thing. What we seek to do in this bill is set up a structure so that all of these companies are accountable. So let's take a look at what it does. It creates the guardrails for our veterans. First, it requires a written agreement with a disclosure that tells the veteran that they can get this exact same service at no cost to them if they go through directly to the VA or through one of our veteran service organizations. And let me state for the record that this legislation is no reflection at all on our Department of Veteran Services or any of our veteran service organizations that operate throughout the state of Georgia. We know that they are doing everything they can to assist our veterans. But the fact of the matter is, and the reality that we deal with is, we have such a large number of veterans in Georgia. We have such a large number of those that are eligible for claims, and the pipeline is just too small, right? We've got over 670,000 veterans in the state of Georgia. We've got a little over 49,000 pending claims. We truly only have 145 representatives that can actually manually input those cases into the VA system. Now, we may hear other numbers like over 700, but what you're looking at is one accredited individual that's accredited with multiple organizations. So you may have an individual that's accredited, but he's also accredited, he's accredited with the VA, he's accredited with the VFW, with the American Legion. So it appears as though there are more than the reality shows. So we have a large number of veterans, a large number of claims, but a very small pipeline of those able to assist the veterans in getting those. So it requires a written contract with a disclosure. These arrangements are on a contingent basis, meaning you cannot charge anything until that award is received. It prohibits a promise or guarantee of a successful outcome, so you can't promise somebody up front what they're going to get. It also prohibits private entities from having doctors on the payroll performing these secondary medical examinations. So it's an arm's length transaction on that. The claims consultants are prohibited from using international call and data centers, and it prohibits direct access to veterans' medical, financial, and government benefits information. And then these claims consultants are also required to have a background check. And to me, one of the most important things is it puts a cap on what they're able to charge. The cap is 5 times the increase of their benefit. So no matter what that award is, it's capped at that 5 times of the benefit. The legislation makes all of these companies subject to the Fair Business Practice Act, and I've had conversations with the Attorney General's office and the folks that handle those cases, and they are prepared to regulate and to enforce under that provision. Now, to be very clear, I agree with everybody in here that says that no veteran ought to be charged a fee to get a benefit they've already earned. 100% agree. 100% agree. But why would we limit our veterans to that if they choose to do so? because as we know, these, a typical claim through the VA can take much longer than what these companies are able to show as a success rate. And so I would submit there's a future value of money concept here, that if I can get that benefit faster today, it's worth more today than me getting that benefit 3 years from now, right? So what I'm asking the committee to do is to allow veterans to exercise their First Amendment rights, to exercise their free market option, and most importantly, protect them when they do that. Because again, I can't underscore this enough. Those protections do not exist today. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
All right, and I was just going to go ahead and, I should have stated this up front, but we heard this same bill in this committee previously, so we're not going to take public testimony on this bill today, but we will take questions from the committee. Senator Harbison, we'll start on that end.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll be forthright with you about my feeling about this legislation. I think I've said this when we're on site in another city. It really gives me concern about the fact that the Veterans Administration, is so inundated apparently with a lot of desires for people to get their benefits. So they're not responding, as you noted earlier in your comments. But on the trail of the cities we attended, Columbus, Augusta, Savannah, we attended, and the people came out of the woodworks and testified. The veterans themselves talked about how they had tried over and over again unsuccessfully to get their benefits and were turned down or never got far or didn't get anywhere. And it's just, it gave me pause for concern. It still does. And I'm just having to try to wrestle this thing to the ground to make sure that I err on the side of always being a champion for the veterans, not only of Georgia, but for veterans for the United States of America. I just think that's what we got to be. You got to look out for the people who paid the price, who are paying the price, who did the fights way off or served way off to support combat troops. So just it really gives me a little heartburn to come on the side of this. And I know your intentions are good. You're a veteran. You're an active duty person yourself, reserve officer yourself, and I know you have the soldiers at heart, in your heart. But I gotta tell you, just like the mushrooms and the new medicine for PTSD that a lot of us suffer with, there's new techniques, there's new things. And the biggest thing for me was the fact that the certification, that sort of got me right there. And I said, well, but if there's a log jam and there's a way around this log jam, I'm just sort of having to become to the sober realization that maybe this is something we should try in the interim, at least until we find a way to get those people who want to help veterans with a minimal charge, in my estimation, to the table where they can receive their benefits. People are hurting. They're out there. These are hard times. People are hurting out there, and they need help, and they're seeking help. And some of the veterans don't know they can get help. And some of them try, and they get turned down flatly and feel rejected, and they never try again. I know that they never try again. They get frustrated. I'm tired of this. You're telling me no, et cetera, et cetera. And once again, as you said, this is not necessarily a put down on the VA. They just got too much, I think, at once, and it's a logjam there. And this may be even a temporary way around it until we can unload that thing. But anyway, I'm leaning towards supporting you, Bill, in that context. I just hope it works out. But I do a lot of voting up here. This is about what I call my veterans, and is I always try to do what is right by the veterans. But that's given me a a little heartburn to
Yes,
do
sir.
this.
And I appreciate that, Senator. And I will say, I mean, this is a conversation that is being had at the federal level. And it may be that Congress finally gets their act together and passes a law that addresses this issue and settles it for the states. But in my estimation, we've been waiting on them a long time.
Yeah.
And I personally just feel it incumbent upon us as a state that if we see an area where we as a state can intervene and help our veterans, that we should do so. So thank you for
But
that.
veterans should not have to pay
Absolutely,
to get that
and this-
benefit.
that's
They've
correct.
got competent people, service officers who do the job, and it's just, we shouldn't pile injustice upon injustice. But once again, as I said, I'm leaning towards supporting your bill.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I just hope we can get past this.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Anyone else? I'll just keep going this way. Senator Bearden?
Thank you, Chairman Bonner, on this. Just want to kind of point out on lines 58 through 61 that we discussed in my office, the disclosure piece. So every form that the veterans get will show the other organizations that's listed on this disclosure, and it will just also let them know that that is a service they could receive free of charge.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, you can imagine going into H&R Block to get your taxes done, and they show you, hey, look, these are all the organizations you can go get this service done for free. A similar situation.
And also just want to kind of clarify, so if a veteran's getting $600 a month, I'm going to use easy math because of myself, and they go to $1,000 after they receive this increase in benefit, the price at that point, 5 times, so it's going to be a $2,000 fee.
That's correct.
I was glad my math was correct.
That's correct. Yeah.
And finally, does this in any way prevent, or can this company reach out to veterans, or do the veterans got to reach out to this company?
Right. It prohibits them from soliciting, directly to veterans. That
I just didn't see that,
Yeah.
and I was trying to go over it real quick, so I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure. All right, that's all I have.
Okay. Mr. Patrick?
Yeah, thank you. Chairman Bonner, I recently had some experience with the Fair Business Practice Act because I had a bill that I had to amend because of where it was in the code. And one of the things that is in the Fair Business Practice Act is a private cause of action. And I don't see that this was carved out, that private cause of action was carved out of this bill, and I'm just wondering if you had contemplated that.
we did not. I mean, we essentially wanted to make the enforcement of this as rigorous as possible. So every provision under the Fair Business Practice Act does apply.
Okay.
Senator Anderson?
I thought, Bon, you.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, good to see you. I regret that we didn't get the chance to talk more in depth about the bill in advance of the hearing. I'm going to echo the very wise words of the dean with respect to my concern and hesitation about the bill, which you're already aware of. I think that for what you are doing, if you philosophically accept paying a portion of the fee as a legitimate business model, then this bill is about as good as it could be. I think my concern is, and I guess I'll put this in the form of a question, how do you contend with the philosophical argument? I think the way the dean summed it up most directly was injustice upon injustice. This idea that by the time we're talking about disability benefits, that somebody has already endured so much, and the government has priced what they've endured at a certain level, which I think we probably should acknowledge is inadequate, but maybe a fiscally conservative price. And then to say on top of that, that the full value as calculated is not available because we've basically, more or less just accepted that the institutions that currently exist are not adequate with the requisite speed, with the requisite diligence to get people the benefits they deserve. How do you contend with that? Essentially that philosophical objection that when it comes to veterans, put other contexts aside, when it's veterans, when it's all the way after this chain of events that they have already endured, to say, and we just lack the political will to make these institutions good enough for you to get the full value.
Yeah, so thank you for the question, and thank you for coming to the hearings as well. I know you heard the same things we did, right? And
Right.
you were impacted by it. I would tell you this, and I, what does it say about a government that makes a promise to provide a benefit, but delays that benefit to the degree that that benefit is degraded, right? So if my claim takes 3 to 5 years to adjudicate, and, maybe I get that back pay, maybe I don't, but it took me 3 to 5 years to get it, and, my quality of life was diminished for that 3 to 5 years, what does that say about the government that made that promise? So, I completely, again, agree, veterans shouldn't have to pay. I do think that the government has created an environment, unfortunately, in a bureaucracy that is weighted against paying out the benefit. I mean, on balance. And so I think, again, this provides veterans one more option available to them. So should they have to pay? Absolutely. I mean, and frankly, I've committed, and I'll say it again publicly, I'm committed to do everything possible to get our Department of Veteran Services every single resource they need in order to assist our veterans in getting these benefits. Again, unfortunately, we saw their budget cut in past years. And so, again, some of those things we can't control, but I absolutely agree that this is not something I wish we had to do, but I would truly say this is something I feel we need to do.
My only last comment in response to the timing thing, I can't think of a rationale why the private sector here would be more efficient or faster at getting results from the VA unless it's either one of two things: the comprehensiveness of the package or some sort of direct line or communication and relationship that speeds it up. And so here's what I'm worried about. With respect to Doug Collins, I voted for his resolution in committee commending him, and I voted against it on the floor. And the reason I gave was because now I've seen him in public signing on to the idea that 80,000 jobs lost from the VA is a good idea. And my concern is that we're moving in the opposite direction we should be moving when it comes to support and resources for the people who are processing these claims. So if we're worried about the timing of these claims today, I think we should be doubly, triply as worried about that in the coming months and years. And so my concern is, are we turning this into a system where the best private industry connections to the VA will determine what privilege the processing and the timing of applications, as opposed to everybody getting a fair shot and being able to compete on the merits? I'm just concerned about a breakdown in the public values that underlie this entire process.
Yeah, no, and I take your point. I appreciate that. What I would say to that is, we are, and in this case, we are regulating private industry, and private industry creates a competitive marketplace, right? And so, they're certainly going to be mindful of best practices. They're going to do every, training, all those kinds of things to make sure that they're up to speed on the latest and greatest in terms of, what, on how to get those packets assembled, the proper wording to use, all those things that frankly sometimes may fall through the cracks when you're dealing with someone who's a volunteer in that regard in helping those folks who may not have all that training available to them. And so, again, I don't think it necessarily undermines the system. I think it just simply creates another opportunity for our veterans to get those benefits that much faster. And I think that what we've been able to show through those hearings is that a number of these private companies do have a higher success rate. In fact, a lot of them exist because the individual went to the VA first and couldn't get satisfaction, but they were able to go to one of these companies and get that.
Thank you. And my last comment to the author on directly is just, I think that this is one of those issues where you can have a reasonable perspective on both sides of the issue. I don't think either side of this is crazy, because it really does depend on what value you're emphasizing. But
Absolutely.
Thank you very
Completely
much.
right. Yeah, thank you, Senator.
Anyone? Sarah Anderson.
Thank you. I'm number 5. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Bonner, so we had the same bill. What organizations have you worked with around this legislation?
In which,
To create the legislation, what organizations have you consulted with or worked with to get this?
so I've worked across the board. I've taken input from some of the claims consultant groups. Veterans Guardian is one. I've taken input from the VFW that they've sent from the Department of Veteran Services. Veteran groups from all over the state have contacted me and provided input, as well as the 3 hearings that we had throughout the state, the different organizations that were part of that.
So this is very similar, if not the same, piece of legislation that we had in a bill that we had in this committee, and we tabled it because we had grave concern. My question is, are those organizations willing to be certified in order to process or to work on a claim for a veteran? Because my understanding is they can only get them to a certain point, and then they're kind of left to themselves. They have no more. After a certain point, there's no more advocacy or any other way that they can help.
So I think you're referring to the accreditation.
Accreditation, that's the
process.
certification.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I meant accreditation.
Yeah.
You're right.
So there is no mechanism for a company to become accredited by the VA. That's an individual kind of designation. And those folks, the accredited individuals are the ones that actually, hand jam the information into the VA database and have access to that database. We're not requesting that. This bill does not contemplate access to that. It simply allows these consultants to work with that veteran to get their packet assembled so that when they take it to be input into the system, that greater chance of it being a first-time go.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's it. I'm good.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. You need,
Oh, you-
he's number 4.
Okay.
Number 4.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a good friend back home. This has been about 20 years ago. He was on active duty and had an automobile accident, got partially paralyzed, and so he was lost his job, and he was trying to get VA benefits. And he came to me because he needed a job, and he was about to lose his home. And he went through the Paralyzed Veterans Association, PBA, is that what it's called? And he had gone to Veteran Affairs and could never get anywhere, but he got with those people. And I think it took him about almost 5 years, even going through those people, to get the benefits. And he got a large settlement, and they paid him back pay and everything. But I was just experienced that with him, and and I'm not patting myself on the back, but thank God I was there and was able to help him, or he and his family would have lost everything, their home and everything.
Yeah.
But, and I've seen it firsthand, where that PBA got involved and they really helped him, and they advocated for him where he couldn't keep doing it because he was just not physically able.
Mm-hmm.
But I just wanted to offer that I've seen it firsthand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon Wicks.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, Chairman. Sorry for my tardiness, I was in another committee. So, Rep. Bonner, you and I have had a conversation about this bill, and like Senator Anderson, this is a similar bill that was tabled in the Senate committee. But in this bill, as I was reading it, this is, it must not exceed up to 5 times the amount.
What line are you on?
I'm reading in this right here.
On the summary.
In the summary, it says up to 5 times the amount. And as the conversation that you and I had before, the issue that I have is that some of the issues and some of the, because I am post 9/11, and I went through the VSOs and I went through the VFWs, and the issue that I have is that we should not, there's organizations out there that these services that are free. And a lot of, when veterans go and they have when they want to get their claims, some of their records are not complete. Some of their issues, and I understand, because even mine, I came in the Army in 1992. So, of course, good record keeping was not done. You went from paper to automated systems. So a lot of stuff had to be transferred over. So a lot of stuff was not automated. You have 2 different systems with the VA, and even I experienced that. So a lot of information that the veterans might have explained to the committee was not conveyed. They said, hey, my records was not updated. I had to go back home and get information. My records was missing because some of my information was missing. Even when these unaccredited organizations, they're still giving the veterans their records, because the veterans are the ones that are submitting their own records to the VA. That's correct? I mean, I have to understand this, making sure that I understand that the veteran, at the end of the day, the veteran is the one that is submitting their own claim to the VA. So if that is correct, regardless if we get a lawyer, regardless if we do it ourselves or whatever organization that we use, it is still up to the veteran to submit their own records. So once they do that, so regardless of these organizations that we use, there's no guarantee that they're going to get 100%, 50%, 10%. There's no guarantee. So even if I do that, I'm going to give you up to 5 times the amount of money for myself to submit my own record to the VA when I know that I can do it for free. I know it's frustrating, but because I think that this is a Band-Aid to a bigger fix. The bigger fix is the VA system. Veterans Affairs, I mean, and of course, that's a federal system, but the bigger issue is the Veterans Affairs Administration. And I understand that even if we do or don't pass this, that these companies, these organizations are still going to operate erroneously. But I just don't feel, because I've seen it myself, that we should allow unaccredited companies, because my thing about it is that people that have served, that we should pay homage to them by fixing the system instead of allowing some unaccredited company to take up to 5 times the amount of money.
Well, Senator, I think he covered some of that in his opening when he presented his bills, and I mean, I just.
But let me
Welcome to
finish my
speak.
point, because we had an offline conversation.
Okay.
But I just don't feel, and I've articulated it to him, I mean to Rep. Bonner, that I just don't feel, because of the disabilities that I sustained, and the hardship that I had to go through of getting to 100%. It took me 8 months, but I stayed the course. And I understand that people go through things or whatever, but I stayed the course.
Thank you, Senator.
Well, if I could, just real briefly.
We're up to a hard
I know-
stop. Go ahead.
I know we disagree on the bill, but I do love your passion and do appreciate that, so.
All right.
Real quick.
Do it.
Just real quick, if I could.
Okay.
So, thank you very much, and I have nothing but respect for you, Chairman Bonner. We've worked together on a lot of things, so continue to do so, I'm sure. I've had a lot of feedback from my district, and particularly, I'm an affiliate of the American Legion, Post 29. And in addition, I have the Warrior Alliance in my district, and they sent me a note, and the letters didn't have time to get in the packets, but they said veterans should never have to pay for the benefits they've earned and deserved. Unaccredited individuals and organizations that charge veterans for their first claim filing is unacceptable. And so I got to stay with my district, and I just wanted to let you know that. Thank you.
All right. All right. Like I said, we're not taking public input. We've already discussed this in our committee before, so we're just, so I will just go ahead and ask what's the will of the committee.
Motion to pass.
I have a motion to pass.
Second.
I have a second. Senator Hickman. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. Your bill passes 5-4.
Thank you, committee.
And having no other business before this committee, right at 3 o'clock hour, we will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you for